As you all know, this is Skoda's sporty Octavia, the RS. And for me, this car is a nightmare. Why? Because all the time I've spent with the RS, I've spent wondering how have they managed to pull this off. Now this RS is more deserving of the RS tag than any of the RSs before, and that's because of that. It has its own special engine. No, it isn't the 1.8 litre retuned, it is a 2 litre turbocharged direct injection petrol. So what is the first thing you notice? Put your foot down hard and you can treat your ears to more as the rev needle heads to the red zone hungrily. 6,500 RPM like that, and when it shifts up at the red line, there's a nice little brap from the exhaust. So it's not just quick, it has the drama that you'd want from it as well. Small details that just feels like there's less sound deadening between the cabin and the engine bay, so you hear a bit more of the engine as well. It just builds that sense of connection. And whether it's the exhaust or the sound of the engine, it's not so much that it will get tiresome over time. You just kind of have it in the background, giving you company. With 230 PS of power and 350 Newton meters of torque on tap in the RS, just how much drama is packed in as standard? So is this car frighteningly quick? Obviously not. But is it seriously, thrillingly fast? Yes, it is. Thanks to a very efficient launch control system, the 0 to 100 time in our test runs was 6.7 seconds, which is 1/10 of a second quicker than Skoda's claimed time. And it feels effortless as it goes about its business just about everywhere. Now, with an engine that's this impressive in terms of outright performance, you'd think city commuting would be a pain, right? But that's the problem. No, it isn't. In fact, the RS feels brilliant in traffic. What I absolutely love is the way it responds to throttle inputs. That has a lot to do with the torque on offer and the gearbox. Although this is a turbocharged engine, there's plenty of torque available right from 1500 RPM. So more often than not, the gearbox shifts up at just around 2000 RPM when you're in traffic. Right? Which brings us to the almost magical 6-speed gearbox. The 6-speed gearbox again will switch from third to second and back up to third in a blink, just so that you can pass that vehicle up ahead without any fuss. So city commuting is a breeze. In our test conditions, driven sensibly, the RS returned 14.2 km per litre on the highway and 10 km per litre inside the city, which isn't bad, but drive like the RS begs to be driven and those numbers will end up in the single digits. Okay, so the RS has got super performance, but at the same time is shockingly nice to drive in the city. But what about the suspension? So the RS sits about 14 mm lower than the standard Octavia, and that aside, it is set up stiffer as well. Compared to the regular Octavia, the RS rides on wider 225 by 45 R17 tires, which are wrapped on larger rims, and this widens the RS's track front and rear. Along with the sportier suspension setup, the RS also has a slightly smaller wheelbase. And let's not forget, it also has a lower stance. So, how does it drive? Turn into a corner and you'll find that the RS's nose tracks just where you want it to. It's pretty responsive, and on the whole it feels very playful too, because the rear just seems to be slightly softly sprung compared to the front, and that means when you're going through a set of S's,
it changes direction quicker than you'd expect.
The RS is heavier than the standard Octavia, and although well controlled, you can feel the body roll too. And then when you push it hard, you will get understeer.
It doesn't feel, that, oh, I'm a serious race car. It's more like, I'm fun, let's drive. What's awesome are the brakes. You can give it a light tap, you can give it a hard push, you can just breathe on them and they'll do exactly what you want them to. The steering is direct, has a nice weight to it, but in terms of outright feel, not all that great.
But there is one big factory-fitted problem. Actually, make that 4.
Okay, what's holding this package back big time are the tires. Because even with mild throttle through a corner, you hear them squealing. Very quickly you understand that it's better to drive a couple of notches down than the ability of the car, just so that you can hold a clean line through the corners. If it had stickier tires, it would just fly through corners and feel a whole load more planted.
Stickier tires are a must if you decide to buy an RS.
In other markets, the RS comes with 18-inch rims. In India, we get 17 inches. Now these look good, and the upside to having smaller rims in that sense is that they'll be much better at dealing with our roads. Now at slow speeds on broken city roads, yes, you'll feel the roads a bit. But as speeds rise, it just gets better and better at soaking up the surfaces. It's actually surprising how easy it is to live with the right quality on offer here.
So you won't think twice about using the RS more often.
It's pretty much the same on the inside as well. The design of the cabin is familiar, but there are touches that make it feel more special. Well, for instance, it is finished in all black, and then there are these seats, which are sporty, so well contoured, and the cushioning along with that Alcantara leather just hug you and hold you so well, very comfortable. And then there's the steering wheel, flat bottom with dimpled finish for better grip. And that aside, in terms of the equipment, this has got, well, what we've come to expect from Skoda.
There are special sporty pedals, and the front seats are powered too. The driver's seat has 3 memory functions as well.
Now with all these settings, drivers of all sizes can very quickly find the right seating position for them. And more importantly, the driving position itself is just so right that immediately you start feeling at ease behind the wheel.
But the cabin isn't perfect.
One thing that's just a bit jarring inside this cabin is this trim here. It's also used here around the gear lever, and it just looks very tacky.
The other miss is in terms of equipment. Instead of the brilliant 12-speaker Canton system, there is an 8-speaker setup here. But the rest of it is as expected. The centerpiece is that large 9.2-inch touchscreen display. It is rich, crisp, and a joy to use. There's a 2-zone climate control, a sunroof, and ambient lighting. And there are soft touch materials everywhere. There are plenty of storage spaces too. And like all Skodas, there are some clever touches.
Okay, so it doesn't have umbrellas, but it has this, a dustbin in the door pocket. Swachh Bharat.
In the rear, you get 2 USB ports for the passengers and aircon vents as well. So what would it be like here?
Now the back seat, it's also wrapped in Alcantara and leather, and in terms of comfort, yes, it could do with a bit more under thigh support, and the view out is restricted a bit by these large seats in the front. But in terms of space, this is as practical here and here as the regular Octavia.
The RS is also offered with Skoda's 4-year service care package. We suggest you spring for that as well. So now, should you buy the RS or not? In our books, it's not much of a choice.
So now you know why the RS is such a nightmare. For all the right reasons. It is a car that's just so hard to fault as a reviewer. It's a combination that you thought was almost impossible. Something that's maddeningly fun, something that you'd love to drive every day, yet very practical even for the family. And all at a price tag where the RS doesn't have to remain as a wallpaper in your life. So, for the Indian enthusiast, the RS is quite simply all the car you'll ever need.